In this video, I'll show you how you can convert text into levels as well as add level settings like the zoom level of the camera. So let's go. All right, let's start by making other node. We're gonna add a tile map. You guys know the drill. We go over here, new tile set. Let's change this. My tile set is 64 by 64. I'm going to import the image. All right, I've dragged over the image. Now go to the tile set tab, drag the image into here. Let's create that atlas. Now let's get to the main part. Let's add a script to this tile map. I'll keep the default name. For this, since we're going to be looking at a text file and the script, I'm going to use VS Code for this. I already have the project open. Here's that script we were just looking at. If you're wondering how to do this next part, just in Godot, right-click your res folder, create new text file. I'm going to make a new folder here. We can call this levels. For this file name, I'll call it level1.txt. We can open that up. Again, I'm going to do this editing in VS Code so we can view both of these at once. All right, I have my level file open on the side here. For my example, I'm going to show placing in the tiles. So I could have red tile as a delimiter. I'm going to use spaces. You can put any number of spaces you want in here. It doesn't matter. It doesn't even have to be the same throughout. So then I want a green tile and then a blue one. And let's say I want a blank spot. So I'll use a period for that. And we can put another green. On the next line, I'll have green. Now let's get to the interesting part. We don't need process, I'm going to take that out. Let's make a function to read from a level file. So I'll call this func load level file. So we want to pass the path that we want to read into here. That's going to be a string. To easily read the contents of our level file, what we can do is say var contents is equal to file access dot open. We just have to provide the path, which is being passed into this function, and the mode that we want, or the flags, is file access dot read all caps. At the end, we can say dot get as text. There we go, that just reads this entire file for us. It's that easy. For now, let's make another function. This one is going to place the tiles based on the string value. So func place tiles based on string. And we want to pass into that the level contents as a string. So level contents, and we'll say it's a string value. I have auto wrap turned on, so it's not actually making a new line here. Let's think about this. We want to split this up. Let's say var board is equal to level contents dot strip edges. This means if you had like extra spaces at the end, it'll take those out automatically. So strip edges. Then we want to split on each line. So we'll have an array where this is one element and this is another one. So dot split. So we want to split on new line. The way that we do that is \n. There's also this other parameter here, which is allow empty, which we don't want because if we had extra lines at the end of our level, then it would count those, but we don't want that. So we can pass false for allowing empty. Then we want to convert that to an array. So we'll say as array. It's kind of weird in Godot. This is a packed string array. We want it as a normal array. I'm going to make a scratch work here to show on the side. That split up our board into these two elements. So this is one element and this is another one. We want to look at each individual character within each of those. To do that, we can say the board is now equal to itself. So board. We can use .map. This applies a function to every element. Remember, we have two lines, so we want to split each of those lines based on spaces. To do that, we can pass a function. We'll say func, then the arguments is a line, which is a string value. Remember to use capital S. Then we return the line with those edges stripped, so strip edges. Then we want to split it on spaces, so we can use .split on spaces, and similar to before, we don't want to allow empty, so we'll say false for that. If we want to print what that looks like so far, we can do that. I'll say print board. I'll show how to do this part in Godot if you want to see this little trick. Inside ready, we can call our load level file function, and you can just drag over our level 1. It automatically gives the path of that file. Let's also call our place tiles based on string inside of load level file. Let's say contents is passed in there and run it. I'll say select the current one. I'll save in the default location. There we go. This is what mine currently looks like. It's an array, and inside of that we have two separate arrays. That's what we want. Back in the VS Code version, remember this has the changes that we just did in Godot because it's the same file. I'm going to take out this print board line. I've copied over the output from Godot so that we know what we're working with. Inside of our place tiles based on string function, let's iterate through this and place the tiles. We can say for y in range the len of the board. This is going to get us the two elements here. Then similarly, let's go through each of the letters in those. Do that, we can say for x in range len of board at y, so square brackets y. Now remember, I'm using this filler character. This is meant to be a blank space, because if I didn't have that, then it would think that this g was supposed to be placed next to the b. So let's make a constant at the top for that. I'll call this const filler, and we like to make constants all capital, is equal to just period. While we're up here, let's go ahead and make the mapping of characters. I'll do this part in Godot since this is where our tile map is. So below the filler, we can say var letter to atlas chord is equal to curly brackets, because this is a dictionary. So when they type R, I want to say that maps to this position, which it tells me atlas coordinates 0, 0. That's a vec2i, vector 2 of integers, that is, 0, 0. Next I'll put G, which this tells me is atlas coordinates 3, 0. So when I type R, it's going to place this tile. When I type G, it's going to place this tile. And similarly for blue, mine is at 1, 0. I'll place that in here. Back in VS Code where we left off at the bottom, we want to check if they're trying to place the filler character, then we basically don't have to do anything. So we can say if board at yx, because we're first looking at how far down we are, and then we move over. It's opposite from normal math class. It's weird. If that's equal to the filler character, then we can just continue. Remember, this is going to just go back up the top and skip whatever comes after this. Otherwise, let's try to place in the character. So we'll use set cell for that. Let's make the constants at the top. It's the main layer that we're placing on. So const main layer is 0. We also have the main source. Remember, all of these are going to be source 0 because it's our only image, so that's source 0. Let's say const main source ID is 0. Back at the bottom, for set cell, the layer is the main layer. Coordinates that we want to place at is this time vec2 of xy. So when we work with the array, it's flipped. Otherwise, it's normal. The source ID is a main source ID. And the atlas coordinates, we want to use that map that we made at the top. So it's letter to atlas chord at position, whatever letter this is, which is board. I'll zoom this out slightly for you guys. Board at yx. Back in Godot, let's see if that works. Yep, so it has red, green, blue, then a blank space, and then another green, and it works below that. Cool. Now let's say we want to have multiple things stacked on top of one spot. For that, let's make another layer. With your tile map selected, go to add element in the layers section. This doesn't have to be named, but I'll call it layer 2. Back in our script, I want to use this happy face here. Let's add that in. So I'll copy paste, and this one is at 3, 1, and I'll use an H for that. So let's say I want the happy face to be on top of the blue tile, so put H there. And when we're placing these in, instead of always placing on the main layer, instead we can assume that each spot is going to have more than one letter potentially. So for that, we can go below here and say for I in range the len of board at y x. And let's just move this line inside of there. And this is going to be the layer that we want to place on. So we'll just say layer is I. Now at the end here, instead of just board at yx, we want to add another set of brackets. It's going to be I. You can think of it this way. The y position is how far down we go. The x is how far to the left or right we go. Then within that spot, I is the letter inside of there. If we run this, there we go. That seems to have worked. One last thing we can do. Let's add a camera. So immediately, if we run this, since we added the camera, that shifts the perspective, that's fine. Let's make it so we can have settings in these level files. I'm going to make it so we can set the camera zoom level. Here's my level file. I'm going to put a blank line after the contents. This is where we can put the settings. Zoom equals 1.5. Let's make another new function up here. We can call this func read settings, and settings is going to be a string. The settings are only going to be the parts down here, but maybe we still have multiple of those. So we can check for setting in settings.split, and we'll split that on new line, which is \n. And as before, we can say allow empty is false. So if we have extra lines at the end, it won't give us an error. Next, let's make a variable setting name and value is equal to setting.split. And I'm going to split on equal sign. We can go ahead and assign those to separate variables. So I'll say var setting name is equal to setting name and value at position 0. And I'll go ahead and strip that. So we can say dot strip edges, and the value setting value is equal to setting value at 1. Then let's check if the setting name was equal to zoom. I'll rename the camera to main camera. Let's save that node. I'll say var camera is equal to get node. It's main camera. We want to convert that to be recognized as a camera 2D, so we can say as camera 2D. Now let's say camera.zoom.x is equal to a float version of whatever the setting value was. So settings value. Same thing for the y, so we can copy paste that. Let's set the y zoom to also be that value. And whoops, this should be it. Setting name and value. Let's scroll up and call our read settings function. We load the level, and then we place the tiles, but these contents should be split up on new lines now. Let's make a variable called var sections. This is how we're going to split up the actual level contents from settings. We can say equals contents.split. Remember, we're using double new line here, so we can use \n, and we don't want empty ones, so we can say false. But let's make this more clear. So we'll say level contents is equal to sections at 0. That's the first section. Then we have settings after that. We'll say var settings is equal to sections at 1. Let's make sure to pass in level contents to this first part. And now let's call our settings function. So read settings. We want to pass in settings. Let's move this line up here. And we can only do the settings part if there's actually settings here. Let's check if the len of sections is greater than 1. Then we can do these two lines. Running the game now, you can see it's zoomed out. If I add back the zoom setting, reloaded, and now it's zoomed in. That's how you can read levels from files as well as settings. Let me know if it was too confusing switching to VS Code. If there's any tutorials you want to see, let me know. Other than that, thanks for watching.